mission endures. We're in this together. Better together. These are all words of wisdom, motivational quips to help us get through this rough patch. As of the release of this podcast, the state of Maine has had a grand total of 12,554 cases of COVID-19. Some of those may be people you and I know, some of which have been MAINEiacs. Of course, in true MAINEiac fashion, we have found ways to adapt and overcome. Leadership has set in motion numerous ways to mitigate this pandemic for our members so that we can stay safe and still continue fighting the good fight, because we are in this together, and the mission certainly endures. I'm Master Sergeant Andy Sinclair, and this is the MAINEiac Radio Show. In this episode, we'll hear from the Wing King himself, Colonel Matthew Bourassa. He has some words he'd like to share with you and I in regards to the pandemic, as well as recruiting/retention. We're also going to hear from our Sexual Assault Response Coordinator, Ms. Bobby Jo Rogers, and she'll talk about the SAPR program and the paradigm shift her office has made while still conducting the SAPR mission flawlessly. Two extremely important guest speakers with a very similar underlying message. Take care of yourselves and those around you. Be invested, be ready, and be safe. After all, we're in the holiday season. Spread the love. 6 feet apart, of course. Up first, the Colonel. Here he is. Colonel, I want to say thank you for taking your time to come in, especially Thursday before drill. I know it's busy, so thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Appreciate the time. I just want to take a brief moment of time to discuss a couple topics, but first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone. Our sincere appreciation on behalf of Wing leadership for everyone stepping up. It's been tremendous. We're very proud of everyone, first of all, doing their part to mitigate against the COVID-19 pandemic, and secondly, continuing the mission. As others have taken a knee, we've picked up the slack and led the charge as usual here at the MAINEiac, so we're very proud of that, and our hats are off to you for that. Thank you very much. And I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and happy holidays. Make the most of it that you can, of course. Chief Osgood has a great saying, physically apart but together at heart, so run with that.
That's a good one. I haven't heard that one.
But I just want to talk a minute about, well, recruiting and retention's on my mind every day. But I wanted to talk a little bit about investments. And people think, well, what do you mean investments? Wall Street? No. It's kind of along those lines, but an investment in the unit. Now, all the current members here obviously have a vested interest in the unit, right? Be it the mission, paycheck, of course, family, that sort of thing. But I want you to take a moment and just think about the future, and to include after you've retired from here. What do you want to be your legacy? What do you want to see the unit? Do you want to see it remain a relevant, viable, resilient, and ready to fight tonight unit? I know I certainly do. So the other day we were discussing innovative approaches to recruiting and retention. And I have a friend down at Bonnie Eagle High School. He's a teacher. And he mentioned to me, hey, why don't you invite your folks to do a virtual tour of a shop or two on base, and we'll have the kids there, people we want to recruit, by the way, and it'll be informative and enlightening for them. So we did it. It took a little bit of momentum, but we had South Portland on board as well, since Bonnie Eagle's down there around the Portland area, and we had a very informative, I guess you'd call it show and tell, but a virtual tour of the jet engine shop, the diesel shop, and some cyber offices and what they do. And the kids loved it. Our biggest problem here, of course, is, and don't forget South Portland, the state of Maine, we are Maine's best kept secret here. And what I mean by that is, hey, we come to work every day, we know it's here, but most everyone else in the state of Maine do not know it's here. For example, yesterday we were on a call talking about recruiting and retention, and South Portland had just recruited a brand new person, and I mentioned on the phone, I said, by the way, even as a member of the MAINEiacs for the first couple of years, I didn't know that South Portland location existed other than driving by it on my way to the airport or the mall down there. And the member down in South Portland said, yes, well, the young man that just signed up and raised his hand the other day confessed that he had driven past here 1,000 times and had no idea what was there. So unless we can get the Goodyear blimp over South Portland with the MAINEiacs logo lit up, or borrow Joe Bornstein's light over there on top of the building, we have to figure out innovative ways to get the secret out and share our secret. So what I would ask folks, think about somebody you know, and I know folks know people in the education field, for example, teachers, principals, administrators, guidance counselors, people that you know personally or through business relationships or in the community, that sort of thing, and invite them to share with us some time to enlighten their kids, all right? We're looking for high school kids, obviously, VOTEC, college students. And I would task you to try and pick one person, just start with that you know that would be open to hosting some virtual tours with our people. And I think you'd be surprised at the success we'll have and how that will help an investment in the MAINEiacs, meaning more people will come in, young people that will replace you and I. And I'm absolutely fine with that because it does happen. I will be the first one to admit I am not irreplaceable, okay? And neither are you. So let's find the people that will replace us and make this a viable institution for decades to come.
We've talked about it before, sir, and I've heard you mention it quite a few times, but the secret sauce. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit about that?
It's not really a secret. It's there if you look. What I mean by that, it's the essence of excellence that I see in every airman here at the wing and in South Portland and Augusta, across the state, actually. It's easy for me to see because I'm looking for it. But most of our folks just go about their job day to day and do what they do best and don't realize how much above the average public they are when they conduct themselves both personally and professionally. But I see it, and that's kind of what the secret sauce is. And how do we measure the secret sauce? Well, it's by our reputation. I would dare ask any AMC air crew if they had to stop somewhere on the East Coast, where would they pick? The overwhelming response would be Maine, of course. And you can see it in 518. There's a little whiteboard up there, for example, and the crews that come by would write their name on there. Thanks for everything. Somebody started that, and then it was a whole whiteboard up there. So they appreciate that. And that's kind of what I mean when we talk about a global brand powerhouse that is the MAINEiacs. I know, for example, wherever I go, and where are you from? Oh, Maine. Oh, the MAINEiacs. I've seen your stickers everywhere, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, well, that's brand recognition. That's our logo. They recognize that as they would Coke, Pepsi, Home Depot, Apple, right? That's our logo. That's brand recognition. And when they look at that logo, they not only think about Maine, the MAINEiacs, the location, but they think of how we help them execute the mission, be it the service they received, the hospitality they received here at Bangor, or where we help them on the road somewhere, or downrange, for example, right? So when they think of that, the essence of excellence, that is the secret sauce.
If I was contemplating on joining the Maine Air Guard or joining the MAINEiacs, the biggest thing, right, is that I feel like one of the bigger competitions is active duty. Like, would I join active duty, or would I want to join the MAINEiacs?
Well, the active duty pull for young folks, as I remember, is, I've grown up in Maine, I need to see the world, right? And active duty gives you that avenue to leave the state of Maine and see other states or countries, for that matter, go all over the world. And what people don't realize until they've gone to active duty, experienced the active duty lifestyle, and then want to come back to Maine, that they can do that right here. Yes, you'll live in Bangor, Maine, or wherever. We have people that commute from all over the country to come to work here. But let's say you want to be a full-timer. You can live right here in Bangor, Maine, for example, and deploy all over the world, go to great places in the CONUS, Alaska, Hawaii, wherever, right? You guys have had some great assignments in the PA office, right? That's kind of the message. I'm the first to understand younger folks. Well, I want to go see the world and do this and that, sure. Okay. Well, when I say investments, don't forget there are long-term investments and short-term investments, right? So plant the seed. Hey, you can always come back home and we're here. We had a lot of strengths not too long ago in our ability to recruit active duty folks from away. Because A, they knew about our reputation, they recognized the global brand powerhouse that is the MAINEiacs, and they said, hey, I'd like to join that group of excellent people. And they would come in. We still do get folks from active duty. It's waned a little bit, but it's still there, and we've planted those seeds. I myself was on active duty, and I first met the MAINEiacs on the road down at MacDill in Tampa, Florida. Colonel Venetestein, big tall guy, I don't know if you remember him. I was flying active duty. We were in base ops together, and I said, oh, MAINEiacs, how you doing? I said, I'd like to join there someday. And that was probably a good 8 or 9 years before I actually joined the MAINEiacs. Oh, how you doing? What's your social security number? They always asked you that.
Really?
00. Oh, if it started with 00 whatever, they would say, hometown social.
Oh, right? That's funny. Yeah. That's hilarious.
But those days are behind us. We don't judge people on hometown social security numbers anymore.
Nor do we give them out that easily.
Right. But that was planting the seed. I was planting the seed in reverse. Actually, I said I want to work with you guys someday. Okay. And then I met them a few other times on the road at Randolph in San Antonio. Some MAINEiacs were there. So active duty folks are interested. So I think that's a big advantage for us.
Yeah, we just not too long ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, you were here in the office, and Major Pampanella came in, and I think she was grabbing a passport photo or something, but it just got me thinking. I did an interview with her a few years back, and she kind of told her backstory about how she come from Ohio, or she came from somewhere out west.
Illinois.
Right? Illinois. So
the flatlands of Illinois.
And she wanted to be a MAINEiac, right? And she wanted to fly for the MAINEiacs, and she tried, I think maybe a couple times or something. I can't remember how the story went, but that story that she had told, that was probably 5 years ago. I heard that story from her. Has always kind of stuck with me, that here you have this. Was she a boomer at the time, or was she maintenance?
Yes,
boomer, and she wanted to fly for us based off what she knew and the reputation that we had, kind of everything that you've been talking about, which is kind of awe-inspiring. And for somebody like myself who who came from security, who was kind of sheltered, like I definitely didn't know we had an engine shop. And what they did. So you talk about that virtual tour, I had no idea. I definitely didn't know that we had a fabrication shop and maintenance doing 3D printing and cutting out metal parts, and it's really kind of crazy thinking about it that way. But
I was on active duty. My first assignment was to Offutt Air Force Base, flying the EC-135s. And I wanted to go see the world, and guess what? The EC-135 doesn't go TDY. In fact, the joke was the TACAN is safety wired to channel 54 in the case of EC-135, meaning that you're not going anywhere out of range of the Offutt TACAN. So we never went anywhere. Once in a blue moon, we would go somewhere. And when I was young and ambitious then, I wanted to get to Germany. And the closest I ever got to Germany on active duty was a 17-mile final to Ramstein.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah.
They wouldn't let us land there that day. We had to go back to England, but that's as close as I got.
That's pretty deflating, right?
Yeah.
Plane.
So folks go, oh, you like to go to GK? I'd love to go to GK because on active duty, I could never get there. When I joined the Guard, I went everywhere. So that's what I'm saying. We're a known quantity. But been to many great places here with the Guard. And I would ask people to develop your elevator speech. Do you know what an elevator speech is?
I do. I don't have one, but I do know what one is, yeah.
Right. It's a sales pitch, basically, think of yourself, you get in an elevator and you've got about 10 to 15 seconds to talk to somebody. Think of you walk into an elevator full of prospects, right? And you turn to somebody, hey, what do you do? I do this, And you got about 10 to 12 seconds to sell that person before they either get off the elevator and gone forever, or they stick around and say, tell me more. So, an elevator speech I like to use, for example, as an aircrew person. Hey, if you want to look out your office window and see the pyramids, Venice, the Alps, the Rhine, the Midwest, the Sierra Nevadas, join the Guard, be a pilot. Does that sound interesting? Or would you rather look out your window and see the same old overpass every day?
That's a heck of an elevator speech.
Yeah. So wherever you work on base, develop an elevator speech. Because believe it or not, you are interesting. You may not think your job is interesting, but it is. And it's very interesting to young people. And they want to know more.
I think that's the biggest appeal, right? Is travel. I know talking to other, younger people, they want to travel. I have family members that say, I would join, and I want to join because I want to travel. I want to go places and see things. And as you know, my brother's in the unit. He's 6 years younger than me, and he's already been on two 6-month deployments before he was 24 years old. And he has counterparts that are active duty and reservists that don't have that experience yet. So the experience that he's gotten just with the Maine Air Guard is unbelievable. I think that when we're talking to these potential these prospects, as you said, that's my biggest approach is okay, how are they thinking? I know why I joined, and for whatever reason, I know my reasons, but why would so and so want to join? And the challenge is where I think that's the most attractive thing for our unit is the challenge behind it and saying, okay, yeah, you get to travel, it's great, but did you know you get school benefits and you get this and that and the other? And by the way, because we're the Guard, you're going to be working with people who are experts in the civilian counterpart field as well. So take CE, for example. You've got 60 different people down there that know how to swing a hammer 60 different ways, but every single one of them is right. And the experience down there and the TDYs that I've been on with them, it's like, holy crap, like these guys are smart. And you've got a chief down there that's a former fine furniture maker in South Carolina, and so he knows how to do all this crazy stuff. And when the beauty of this place is that when your time comes for a change and you want to change and there's other opportunities and to be for retention and looking elsewhere, I think that that's what I try to do is to spread the good word and show that there are these shops out here that I never knew that we even existed in the military, let alone our Guard base.
That's a great aspect you mentioned, and it's regarding retention. So, I like to think of this as a family, right? So, in your family, if someone, say your brother, gets a new job, do you kick them out of the family? No. Right. So, people need to realize, well, I'm not really happy at my current job, for example. All right. We have other jobs on base, right? Is there another job that you think you might be more passionate about, for example? And you're a real world example of that. You said, okay, this job's okay, but I'm thinking of something else. Okay, no problem. Let's see what we can do for you. Because at the end of the day, we want you to be happy, right? So if we can get you into the right spot, that's great. And we will work with you to do that. Also, folks, when they have a life event, they get married or something like that, and they wind up having to leave the unit for reasons other than they don't like their current job or they couldn't get a different job, they have to go somewhere else. I always tell them, hey, the door's open. When you leave, we're going to leave the door open, meaning that if you have a change of heart 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road and want to come back, we haven't closed that door. Just because you left now doesn't mean you can't come back, right? So they need to know and realize, hey, if you leave and then want to come back, we will work with you to come back. Not a problem. Unlike downtown, where if you say, you know what, I've worked here 20 years and I think I'm getting done. You hang up the phone and security's there with the box. Here's your box, fill your box, you're out. You're gone.
Just like the movies.
Right. It is just like the movies. That's not us. Okay. And then, a lot of people like to travel. I love to travel, but not everyone likes to travel. And there are many aspects to the MAINEiacs that will appeal to younger folks. For example, leading edge technology, right? We talked about 3D printing, for example, and the leaps and bounds we've made in just a few years in 3D printing. And oh, by the way, do you know where the largest 3D printer in the world happens to be? California, right? Nope. Orano, Maine.
Orano. I like that.
Or otherwise known as UMO, right? Yeah. They have the world's largest 3D printer there, by the way. And Professor Habib Dogger, fantastic. Leading the world in 3D printing. Hey, that might be important technology. So I want you to think about, we should connect with those kids up there and the young adults that are working with him and his team on 3D printing and say, hey, by the way, we have a 3D printer here. And then just think about it further. What are the possibilities? Could we not, do we have the real estate here, for example, to set up a 3D printer and start printing KC-135 parts, for example, and be the place, the 3D printing factory on Earth for KC-135 parts that seem to be kind of hard to get? We could, right? We could put that together. So people need to realize, hey, what you see before you, you can improve upon, right? I have a relative, a young lady that she's works in Ohio, and there's an entrepreneur there. He wrote a book called The Answer is Yes, What is the Question? And he's going towards customer service. Hey, the customer's always right. The answer is yes, what can we do to get that done? And the 3D printing is an example of that.
Do you mind if we talk for a second, sir, about what's going on with us and how we are and how we have responded to the pandemic and what it looks like for us kind of moving forward?
Absolutely. The mission endures. Yes. We just dropped some folks off in Sioux City the other day, actually. Yeah, and other parts this week. So the mission endures, right? So we have to figure out how to adapt and pivot given this pandemic and its restraints and constraints, and continue the mission, while at the same time introducing zero risk, if possible, into that equation. And it's not easy, right? I like to mention that we're writing the script as we progress from day to day. And that makes a lot of folks uneasy. Get a lot of questions. Where's the path? I said, I don't know. We're blazing the path as we speak. And the unknowns make a lot of folks uneasy. But put it in perspective. Think about the Spanish flu, for example. Other times in American history where it's been dark days. World Wars I and II, for example. We've always gotten through it. So all I would say is do your part. Mitigate the risk, first of all, to yourself and your family and friends and the workplace. Social distance, wear your mask, wash your hands, right? Those simple steps. Do that. That will help us continue the mission here. And it will allow all of us to survive, right? So while we have the vaccines on the horizon, that's the good news. And hopefully we're in the final stretch of this. But it could be a little dark in that final stretch, as is customary. So do your part, I would say. And we will continue the mission.
Anything you'd like to add, sir?
Nope, other than once again, as I began the podcast, I want to thank everyone, appreciate everyone's hard efforts to get the mission done, and most importantly, to take care of each other. Don't forget, I like to mention that we have overwhelming firepower when it comes to resources to help our airmen. Tracy Souza, Drew Maitlands, for example, more than ready to help. Our personal financial counselor, seek them out. They are here to help you. Our chaplains, our chaplain Michaud is here full time. Take advantage of that. Talk to them. They want to help you. Because if you're not ready to fight, we're not ready to fight. So have a great holiday season. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. Have a great drill, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Colonel, for spending some time with PA. And as he mentioned in the interview, be sure to develop that elevator speech. You never know when you'll need it. I know I'll be working on mine. Hi, I'm Andy. That's as far as I've got. I should work on it. Let's move on to our second guest, Miss Bobby Jo Rogers. You've seen her around. She's awesome. We're lucky to have her with us, both as our SARC and militarily in FSS. For this interview, we're not 6 feet apart, because it was over the phone. So sorry if the audio sounds a little off. But hey, adapt and overcome, right? Here she is. What's going on in the world of SAPR right now?
Well, so SAPR and what we do and the folks that we support continues to happen, pandemic or not. And so there have been some changes that the Department of Defense has made with regards to the SAPR program to accommodate the restraints that are imposed because of the pandemic. So one of the things that I really am happy that they did was they adjusted our paperwork. And some people might say, well, what's the big deal about that? We are required by regulation to respond, and response means physically go to where somebody may need help. So if somebody wanted to report a sexual assault or even just ask questions for themselves or a friend, we're expected to go meet with them. And that's not really possible all the time during this pandemic, right? It's for various reasons. It might not be safe for me. It may not be safe for them. We may be under, I hate the term lockdown, but when we're self-isolating or we're trying to stay restricted. So what the Department of Defense has done is they've adjusted the protocol for us in response, and we are actually able and allowed to do telephone accompaniment. So even if it gets down to the official, hey, I want to file an official SAPR report. And if you remind me before the end of this conversation, I'd like to chat about what I mean by official SAPR report.
Okay.
So yeah, if somebody wants to file that official SAPR report, typically we need them in our presence because they have to sign the document that we have. And the DoD even converted that document and added verbiage in there for what they call COVID response. And that's where I, as the SARC or one of our victim advocates, would sign under the COVID response and check that it was a COVID response so that there would be that documentation that it wasn't a normal in-person type of a response. So very stoked that they did that. As you know, different parts of the country have been up and down with the pandemic. So where we may have been a little more safe, Penobscot County, all of our services, all of our community services have continued to do in-person accompaniment through this, but we're the only ones in the entire state of Maine.
Wow.
And then throughout the country even. So by having that COVID response piece within our protocols now, it allows us as a program far and wide to respond no matter what and provide support as best we can, given the circumstances.
Well, which is huge, right? Because of everything going on, we have to remain flexible. So even though you guys have been kind of given permission or authorized to do these, I guess, digital conversations minus the official reporting, right? That's going to be a little bit tricky on your end, because I would think that during the whole process, meeting face to face and picking up on body language and other cues and other forms of communication is probably key in what you do, right?
It absolutely is. And that is definitely one of the things that we working with somebody each time, in person or not, every time is going to be a challenge because everybody's experience is different. We might apply the same term, sexual assault or sexual abuse, to what happened to somebody, but everybody's experience is different. And so it is tough enough doing it in person. And when you get into, like you said, on the phone, or even if we're on a FaceTime call or a Zoom call, is still not being able to read the body language and those sorts of things. And, for some people, it just doesn't work. I think throughout this pandemic, people have even given their shot at telehealth type counseling, right? Therapy counseling. And for some people, that video chat works. For others, it doesn't. And so we'll find a way to make it work. As I said, Penobscot County, we can still do in-person accompaniment. And as long as we're being safe, we'll always support the victim the best that we can, and for what is best for them at that moment.
And what about your advocates? Are they kind of restricted to that same protocol, or can they meet face to face?
No, absolutely. So we're not restricted to that protocol necessarily. We are following whatever the CDC guidance is for the area at the time. If we have a member, say, who lives in Connecticut or Massachusetts, I probably couldn't go do an in-person accompaniment with them right now, because to go to Massachusetts, I have to quarantine for 14 days, right? And then to come back to Maine, I have to quarantine. And the victim advocates would have to follow that same protocol. So we're not restricted to only over-the-phone accompaniments, but it's something that's been given to us as an option, so that the folks who want to work with us have that option as well.
Okay.
But yes, the victim advocates absolutely do follow the same protocol, and work with our folks that way. Yes.
So in regards to training, with SAPR training, which is something that it's a reoccurring thing every year. Has anything changed on that front with everything going on?
So with the SAPR training, we kind of had to pivot on that one. For starters, the training came out late, and that's just kind of one of those things that happened. We always have to wait a few months for it, and then this year it was a little bit longer because, boom, as they were getting ready to release it, COVID hits, and then what do? Because this was training developed for face-to-face communication. And so at the beginning of the training year in April, when the curriculum was released, we kind of tossed around ideas, myself, Master Sergeant Kimball down at Spangs, and a couple of other folks who have helped with the training in the past, and we just said, okay, what are some ways that we can do this to help facilitate the training and make sure that the information gets out there? And there were a couple of different opportunities out there. I really like the SAPR Bingo, and the Com Flight actually took advantage of that when we were in our COVID lull, I call it, when we could still kind of be in a room with masks on, but, we didn't have to do it virtual. So they did the SAPR Bingo, and it really worked out neat. It allowed for the commander to give his take on why the SAPR program is important to the wing and to him personally. And it gave because it was training that was happening with the SARC in the room, it gave folks an opportunity to ask questions, and ask questions that they don't typically ask during the face-to-face training when it's more facilitated. So that actually worked out really well, and I got a lot of positive feedback from that. Another thing that we put out there, if you haven't done it yet, you will soon, most likely, is the commander's talking points were sent out to each member for a lot of the units with a message from their commander, and then we're all required to go and do a knowledge check. Now that knowledge check, that requirement for that knowledge check is not an Air Force requirement. That was how do we make sure that our folks are getting this information, right? Because if you just toss out a PDF to somebody or a flyer and say, here, read this, and then your training is done, they may never read it. And the information is important. And so by having that knowledge check in there and having a required score, then we know that folks are actually reading the information. They may not be happy about it because, who wants to read more information? But we know that they're reading it. And that's, one of the things that I don't think that people in general, I'm saying people in general, kind of put together, when we're not in a COVID environment, our annual training is 15 to 20 minutes a quarter with the commander for commander's talking points. So you're already going an hour to an hour and 20 minutes right there just for commander's talking points. And then we have the face-to-face requirement, and that's usually an hour to an hour and a half once a year. So when you look at that approximately 3 hours of training that's required every year for our SAPR annual refresher training, sitting down and reading a few PDFs and answering some questions that might take you an hour-ish, depending on how well you read and comprehend and whether I developed the questions so that they weren't too confusing, and I hope that I did. You're still putting in less time, but getting the information. And I will say that opened up a lot of avenues for communication as well. I've had a lot of people who have reached out to me to say, hey, I just read this in the training. I'd like to ask you a few questions. I even had somebody in our senior NCO ranks who reached out and said, hey, how come I never knew about the Maine Air National Guard 24-hour hotline, which, led to a conversation to have with the senior NCO that this hotline has existed for quite a few years. And just that gave me an opportunity to also say, okay, what do we need to do better to get that information out to you? Because if you didn't even know this existed and we've had it for some time, what are we doing incorrectly, or what could we do in addition or do better to help with that? So this year's training, we pivoted. Everybody did a great job. Our numbers are fairly decent. We still have folks that need to get it done, but I think that it gave us opportunities that we haven't had in the past, and it opened up some extra lines of communication that may not have been there otherwise. And
I think it's been tricky, obviously, for everybody. 2020 has turned out to be quite the adapt and overcome type of year, but yeah, it is crazy. But for you, especially being a one-person shop essentially, and then of course you have your advocates as well, and then on top of that you have another hat where you are also you just recently enlisted into the Maine Air Guard, so that's pretty exciting.
I did.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I did. Thank you.
You've got all that as well. You got those two hats, so you kind of have to adapt and overcome within themselves with everything going on. It's pretty wild, but so you're busy and you just closed on a house. So that's even crazier. But
right, yeah. I like to think of this as our domestic deployment, right? We train hard. We put on chem suits. We go into MOP 4. We train to do stuff that we don't want to ever do, and then we get on a plane and we fly to other countries far, far away from home, and we do all this craziness, all in the name of protecting people's rights, all in the name of keeping our country safe or our state safe, all in the name of helping to protect other people. Whatever that particular mission is, we go and we do things that are totally uncomfortable, that require us to consistently be pivoting, basically our heads on a swivel, right? And we do that. Well, now we're in a position where we have to do that at home. We're having to, like it or not, wear masks, do in-person accompaniments even when it may not be safe, or do over-the-phone accompaniments when it may not be comfortable. Telework, not telework. Make people wear masks and use hand sanitizer and take a temperature before they come in the building. Whatever these things are looking like, we've had to pivot and do things that aren't particularly comfortable, all for the greater good. And I think that from a sapper perspective, I think that the folks in the Maine Air National Guard and the Maine National Guard as a whole, I think we've done fairly well in meeting that challenge. And I'm very proud to be a part of all of that, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that brings up an interesting point. I talked about this with somebody on our podcast back in March or April. From my perspective, that you mentioned this is kind of like a deployment at home. I had kind of related this whole scenario and pandemic to a deployment, and my reasoning behind all that was that we as human beings, when we're put in these situations where it's kind of an extreme situation and it's out of our norm. Just like a deployment, your true colors are going to show. And I think that with you and some of the, I guess is the technical term, like you, Drew and Tracy, you guys are like support services, is that right? Or am I?
Yeah, support services, helping agencies.
Okay.
We're often referred to as, yeah. So
with you guys in particular, looking out for your wingmen, which isn't just your responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility, and keeping that at the forefront of your mind, that looking out for your coworker and your subordinates, or even your supervisors or your superiors. In time.
I'm glad that you brought that up. If I can interrupt for a quick second, I actually kind of put that out to our leadership at the pre-drill meeting, and for anybody who's listening to this right now, what I would like you to kind of keep in mind is that every one of us that puts that uniform on is a human being. And human beings have a psyche, and we process life the way our brain tells us we're going to process life. And what I would like everybody to remember is that we have Mr. Matlins, we have Tracy, we have myself, we have commanders. Commanders are commanders because they are supposed to lead, and they are human beings, and they all have lots on their plates. So while we're all thinking about looking out for our junior airmen and taking care of them, and we absolutely have to do that, let's keep in mind too that our leadership folks, they're taking care of those junior airmen, and we need to make sure somebody's taking care of them as well. So ask your commander, ask your supervisor, every once in a while, hey, how are you holding up? Hey, how are things going? What are you doing to make this easier on yourself and your family? Have that conversation, that same conversation that we tend to tell our leadership to project that downward. We need to make sure we're projecting that upward as well.
You see it driving on the road. Everyone's at their frayed ends, whether it's lack of sleep or stress, or they've got a family member who's been diagnosed with COVID-19 or whatever the case may be. I kind of relate that to what you guys are there, and you guys are the professionals where you don't know what that other person is going through. A year ago we had the tactical pause, and it's kind of it's all in the same wheelhouse. To stop and take a second and ask. Ask your coworker, ask your family member, whoever, or a stranger, hey, is everything going okay? Everything all right? Pay it forward at Dunkin' Donuts, whatever. It makes a big difference, but that's interesting. Yeah. So that's good. So you guys, it's good to hear what your office and what you are doing during this pandemic. But really the whole reason why I wanted you on this podcast, this episode, was that to kind of get the information out. And the overarching theme is that you are here and you're still available, and you're still pushing forward on all pistons type of thing. So what are some things that you would like the listeners, other than what you've already said, to know and to understand moving forward?
I would like them to be reminded that we are here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The hotline number, the 24-hour response hotline number is 207-307-5466. That will be manned 24/7 by either myself or one of our victim advocates. My work cell phone number, my government cell phone number, is 207-631-5189. You can always call me directly on that. I will get back to you as soon as possible. If you leave me a message, or if I see a missed call, I will always respond to that as well. So I want to make sure that they understand how to get in touch with me. That's super important. The other thing that I wanted to kind of refresh everybody's memory, this was one of the big things that came up. I talked earlier about the annual training and how it opened up some lines of communication, and people asking questions saying, hey, I never knew that. We have a lot of training to do, and I would be lying if I said I never check out when I go to training. Fact is, we all do. We've got a lot on our plates, and sometimes we just miss the information because we've got a lot going on and our brains just check out. But one of the things that has come up a lot this year that is not new is that SAPR services are actually available for family members as well. Now, there's some stipulation to that, right? So if it's a dependent who is under 18, that's a mandatory report. That's child abuse, that's child sexual abuse, whichever lane that's going to fall in, it's still a mandatory report. But for any dependents who are 18 and over, so spouses or children dependents who are still going to college and are still considered a dependent in the MIL-PDS, in the DEER system, they are eligible for SAPR services as well. And if a family member would like SAPR services, they can call those same numbers that I put out just a few minutes ago, and they are not required to go through their service member sponsor. So let's say college student, 21-year-old dependent would like to get advocacy services and do a restricted report. They can call me directly. They do not have to go through their parent, and I can support them and provide advocacy services to them if that's what they would like. So just, if you don't know it already, put this into your thinking cap and just kind of remember that SAPR services are available for dependents as well, as long as they're over 18 years old.
Wow. Yeah. See, I didn't know that either. Which makes sense. It makes sense to me that would be the case. Yeah. Wow. And and you mentioned your phone numbers, and I'll be sure to put those in the link to the description of this podcast. But that way, as like a quick reference. But yeah, no, that's good to know. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I think that's good. I think I've thrown a lot at you folks today, and I appreciate you giving me the time and the space to actually talk about these things so that people are aware that we are still, as you said, running on all pistons. Yeah,
exactly. No, and we appreciate you coming on and doing this. And we should try and do this as a reoccurring thing, especially it's an ever-changing world, it seems like, not only within the military, but in the SAP world as well. So
absolutely.
Thank you, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.
Thanks again to both Colonel Bourassa and Bobby Joe for taking time out of their busy schedules to talk. A lot of important information to digest. Drill is here. Hybrid drill is here. The perfect time for some training. Be sure to jump onto ADLS, TBA, all those fun places, and get yourself in the green. Check us out on social media by searching 101 STARW, where you'll find us on Facebook, Instagram, Google Play, and of course iTunes and Divids. And check out our recruiters pages as well. Invite your friends to follow them, help spread the word, and pass around that secret sauce. Stay safe during the holidays.
Is your house on fire, Claw?
No, Bethany, those are Christmas lights.
Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and, can I say it? Am I allowed to say it? I'm going to say it. We'll see you all next year.